It's fine. I can trim it.
Huh?
I can trim the video. It's recording now.
Oh, okay. I'm Steve Brown. I'm 66 years old. I served in Vietnam from February of 1967 to March of 1968. Early in March.
What branch of them? Did you say what branch you served in?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was in the U.S. Navy and I was on coastal patrol boats called swift boats, as opposed to the PBRs made famous by Apocalypse Now and other movies.
How many men served on the patrol boats?
1 officer, 5 enlisted.
And what was your duty?
I was a radioman, and as a radioman, my primary duty was, of course, taking care of the crypto pubs, which is the encoded messages that changed monthly and blah, blah, blah. But also to board and search any vessels we stopped, because it was part of Operation Market Time, that's what it was called, and the primary duty of the swift boats was to stop and search coastal shipping, to stop the infiltration of arms and equipment and ammunition from the north to the south by sea. Now, as you may know, there are several navigable rivers in South Vietnam. There's the Mekong, but that's way south. Up by Nha Trang, there's another one that I can't remember the name of, and one that was on just north of the Bon Son Peninsula, which fell within the area we patrolled most often. So we were in the central coastal region, and we patrolled from 30 miles north of a city called Quy Nhon to about 30 miles south of Quy Nhon. And it was midway between Da Nang and Saigon, or Da Nang and Ho Chi Minh City, depending on what era.
While you were overseas, did you see any open combat?
We saw combat, but not in the sense that guys in the jungle did. Yes, we got shot at, and it's kind of freaky on the water because you can see the bullets coming at you. They're making water spouts walking up to the boat. But truthfully, we were shot at as frequently by allies as we were shot at by the Viet Cong or the North Vietnamese regulars. And we could always tell we were being shot at by allies, normally the Koreans, because the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese never used tracer bullets. A tracer bullet is one of those that light up. They burn, I think, white phosphorus on the back. And so they leave a trail so that you can see where your bullets are going. And the Viet Cong never used them because they didn't want you to know where the bullets were coming from. Koreans didn't care. Let me see, what else of interest? All right, any questions?
Did you interact with any of the locals, the natives?
Quite a bit, actually. Because of my duties, a large part of my instruction before leaving training in Coronado, California, should mention that. Training in Coronado, California, which is right by San Diego, just across the bay. I had a lot of language training. Not that I learned to speak Vietnamese. I did not. Similar to Chinese, they have some tonal qualities in their language that add a level of complexity to it. But I learned enough phrases to carry on a rudimentary conversation restricted to travel and goods carried and, obvious things of this nature. So I could ask a person where they were leaving, where they were going to, and check their story against their cargo manifest and what they said they were carrying against their cargo manifest. So yeah, to a limited extent. And then, of course, we had actually I developed one good friendship with one of our Vietnamese sailors who sailed with us as interpreters, and was over to his house for dinner a couple of times. And because his English was very good, and he helped me with my Vietnamese a little, but he was more comfortable speaking English and he wasn't listening to my Vietnamese. And it was nice because I got to see, when I would go over to his house for dinner, here's one of the first things I noticed. The wife served the dinner to us, but didn't sit and eat with us. And the children just peeked at me from around the corner of the doorway. They didn't even come into the room. So I'm not quite sure of the interpretation of that. I mean, it could be anything from honored guest to stay away from the American. Who knows?
The Vietnam War was pretty much the first war in American history that the general public didn't really support or get behind. It was one of the first ones that had really widespread anti-war sentiments back home. And so what was that like to be fighting in a war that people back home didn't really want you to be fighting?
You know, it's part of what I just don't think about anymore. It's part of what I kind of shut out. Otherwise, I find I could be resentful over, say, the treatment of servicemen coming home from the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War, people thanking them for their service, as opposed to us in the 60s. The government, even for a while, allowed us to travel in civilian clothes, because traveling in uniform, we were getting spit at the airport, having things thrown at us, and our uniforms soiled by people throwing things at us. So, yeah, it was a rather unpleasant time. A couple of my friends even went to Canada. One guy, I won't give you his last name, but Greg, a longtime high school buddy, rather than be drafted, he left and went to Canada. And I didn't see him. He was actually arrested as a deserter when he came back. So I didn't see him until I was like 23, when he finally got out of the stockade and came home to Chicago. No, I wasn't 23. I would have been about 22. And they let him out, and I was able to see him again. It was kind of interesting comparing stories, one who went and one who wouldn't.
So there was a lot of there wasn't a lot of support back home. Did you support the war effort? Did you?
I had no idea. I was 18 years old, so I knew. I had very little consciousness of the political or socioeconomic or any of the other things. At the time I was not a good student, and I had left high school and joined the Navy. So I wasn't really aware of all of this stuff prior to going to Vietnam. What was making more of an impact at the time were race relations, because segregation was just getting into full swing. Remember, I was in Vietnam. I left to go over there in the beginning of 1967, and I think that was right on the heels or concurrent with the LA riots. So one of the things that we had to contend with, not so much on our base where I was first stationed in Quy Nhon, but when we moved to Chu Lai, our boat moved to Chu Lai about 6-7 months into our tour, and we finished it up there, and there were a lot. It was a much larger base, so people didn't know each other well like they did on our little swift boat base in Quy Nhon, and that strangeness and enmity. There were knifings and shootings that were racially motivated. So that was much more alarming and much more difficult, especially when you had friends on both sides. So, and I mean good friends. We're talking a war zone. We're talking watching each other's backs and making sure not. And now you're watching each other's backs not only against the known enemy, but against you don't know enemy. So that was equally as bad and quite possibly worse than the lack of support at home, because this came with us. Mm-hmm. The lack of support at least stayed at home.
And you were discharged before the end of the war, right?
Yes, I was honorably discharged in June of, actually, I think I got out a month early, May of 1969.
And once you were home and the war was still going on, did you support it then?
No, I'd lost some friends, and one of them horribly, and I couldn't support it. So, as much as you join anything of that type, there were no application forms or anything, but I joined the Vietnam Veterans Against the War.
And did you ever go to any protests or?
The one I remember the most was at the Beverly Wilshire, I think Beverly Wilshire Hotel, right on Wilshire Boulevard in West LA, Beverly Hills. In Beverly Hills, it was the fucking Beverly Hilton. No, it wasn't the Beverly Hilton. It was the one on Wilshire Boulevard. I can't think. The one that was in the first Eddie Murphy Beverly Hills Cop.
Okay.
That was the hotel he stayed at. So Premier 2 was in the States trying to get more money, trying to get more support, and Nixon was there, and I don't know who else was there. So they're at this big dinner at the hotel, and we're all out in front with picket signs and marching up and down, protesting, and there were news people there, of course. And what was the embarrassing moment for me is I knew why I was there. I had all of these, revolutionary things going on in my head, and somebody stuck a microphone in my face and pointed a camera at me and said, "Tell us why you're here." And I went, I was absolutely dumb. I had nothing came out of my mouth when the mic went in my face and the camera was pointed at me. It was mute. So all of that anti-war rhetoric stored up for nothing. But to be totally honest, I was also in that movement so that I could meet girls who didn't wear bras.
All right.
I don't know who's going to see this interview, but I think honesty is important.
It's a good way to finish it, I think.